Thanks. I must admit, I rolled out of a lazy Saturday morning here. Rocky texted me. I wasn't really expecting an AI hackathon to be this huge. That's pretty exciting times. Well, anyway, thank you all for coming, first of all. Thanks so much for giving Gemini a go. What should I say? We actually have people who know what they're talking about, I think. Okay, Simon. Okay, how's it going now? All right, good. I was worried I would have to say something that I'm not quite up to speed on. I'll just quickly say, look, it's very exciting times. This model that I think we're playing with 1.5 Pro.
Yeah, 1.5 Pro. Yeah.
We internally call it Goldfish. I'll just tell you a little secret. I don't actually. Oh, I know why. It's because goldfish have very short memories. It's kind of an ironic name. But when we were training this model, we didn't expect it to come out nearly as powerful as it did, or to have all the capabilities that it does. In fact, it was just part of a scaling ladder experiment. But when we saw what it could do, we thought, hey, we don't want to wait. We want the world to try it out. And I'm grateful that all of you here are here to give it a go. What else can I say? When they're introducing somebody else, what's happening next?
I think people will probably have a lot of questions.
Oh, okay. Quick questions. I'm probably going to have to defer to technical experts on those things, but fire away. Any questions?
Yeah, go ahead. Don't be afraid.
The man with the naked shirt.
So what are your reflections on the Gemini art happening? With,
The Gemini art.
the background, yeah, with the...
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't really expecting to talk about today, but we definitely messed up on the image generation, and I think it was mostly due to just not thorough testing, and it definitely, for good reasons, upset a lot of people on the images, as you might have seen. I think the images prompted a lot of people to really deeply test the base text models, and the text models have two separate effects going. One thing is just quite honestly, if you deeply test any text model out there, whether it's ours, ChatGPT, Grok, what have you, it'll say some pretty weird things that are out there that definitely feel far left, for example, and kind of any model, if you try hard enough, can be prompted to in that regime. But also, just to be fair, there's definitely work in that model that, once again, we haven't fully understood why it leans left in many cases, and that's not our intention. But if you try it starting over this last week, it should be at least 80% better of the test cases that we've covered. So I'd invite all of you to try it. This shouldn't be a big effect. The model that you're trying, the Gemini 1.5 Pro, which isn't in the sort of public-facing app, the thing we used to call Bard, shouldn't have much of that effect, except for that general effect that if you sort of red team any AI model, you're going to get weird corner cases. But we're not, even though this one hasn't been sort of thoroughly tested that way, we don't expect it to have strong particular leanings. I suppose we can give it a go. Though we're more excited today to try out the long context and some of the technical features.
Thank you.
Brett? Yeah, with all the recent developments in multi-modalities, have you considered a video chat GPT?
A video chat GPT, we probably wouldn't call it that. No, I mean, multimodal, both in and out, is very exciting with video, audio, and we run early experiments, and mean, it's an exciting field. Even the little, you guys remember the duck video that kind of got us in trouble? Though, just to be fair, it was fully disclaimed in the video that it wasn't real time. But that is something that we've actually done, is fed it images and, in like frame by frame, and had to talk about it. So, yeah, that's super exciting. I don't think we have anything like real time to present right now today. Yeah.
Are you personally writing code for some projects?
I have been actually writing code, to be perfectly honest. It's not like code that you would be very impressed by. But yeah, every once in a while, just a little like kind of debugging or just trying to understand for myself how a model works, or to just analyze the performance in a slightly different way or something like that. But little bits and pieces that make me feel connected. It's, once again, I don't think you would be very technically impressed by it, but it's nice to be able to play with that. And sometimes I'll use the AI bots to write the code for me because I'm rusty, and they actually do a pretty good job. So I'm very pleased by that. Okay, question in the back.
Yes.
Want of man first. Yeah.
Okay, so pre-AI, the closest thing we got to simulators was game engines. What do you think the new advances in the field mean for us to create better games or game engines in general? Do you have a view on that?
Sorry, no, it wasn't like a sigh because of disapproval or anything. I think. Okay. I mean, what can I say about game engines? I think obviously, like on the graphics, you can do new and interesting things with game engines. But I think maybe the more interesting is the interaction with the other, virtual players and things like that, like whatever the characters are. I guess these days, you can call people who are bland NPCs or whatever. But in the future, maybe NPCs will be actually very colorful and interesting.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really rich possibility. Probably not enough of a gamer to think through all the possible futures with AI, but it opens up many possibilities. Yeah.
What kind of applications are you most excited about for people building on Gemini?
Yeah, what kind of applications I'm most excited about? I think just ingesting right now, or for the version we're trying to, the 1.5 Pro, the long context is something we're really experimenting with. And whether you dump a ton of code in there or video, I've just seen people do. I don't think a model could do this, to be perfectly honest. But people will dump in their code and do a video of the app and say, here's the bug, and the model will figure out where the bug is in the code, which is kind of mind-blowing that works at all. I honestly don't really understand how a model does that. But I'm not saying you should do exactly that thing. But yeah, experimenting with things that really require the long context. Do we have the servers to support all these people here banging on it? So,
We have the people that run the servers here as well.
Okay,
So, yeah.
because my phone is buzzing. Everybody's really stressed out, but you guys
Yeah.
testing it too aggressively. Because the million context queries do take a bit of compute and time, but you should go for it. Yeah.
You mentioned a few times that you're not sure how this model works, or you weren't sure that this could do the things that it does. Do you think we can reach a point where we actually understand how these models work, or will they remain black boxes if we just trust the makers of the model to not mess up?
No, I think you can learn to understand it. The fact is that when we train these things, there are 1,000 different capabilities you could try out. So on the one hand, it's very surprising that it can do it. On the other hand, if it's any particular one capability, you can go back and, we can look at where the attention is going at each layer between the code and the video. And, we can't deeply analyze it. I've personally done that. I don't know how far along the researchers have gotten to doing that kind of thing, but it takes a huge amount of time and study to really slice apart why a model is able to do some things. And honestly, most of the time that I see slicing, it's like why it's not doing something. So I guess I would say it's mostly because I think we could understand it, and people probably are, but most of the effort is spent figuring out where it goes wrong, not where it goes right. Yes.
Yeah, so in computer science, there's this concept of reflective programming, where like a program can look at its own source code, maybe modify its own source code. And then in AGI literature, there's like recursive self-improvements. So what are your thoughts on the implications of extremely long context windows and the language model being able to modify its own prompts, and what that has to do with like autonomy and building towards AGI potentially?
Yeah, I think it's very exciting to to have these things actually improve themselves. I remember when I was, I think in grad school, I wrote this game where like it was like a wall maze you were flying through, but when you shot the walls corresponded to bits in memory, and it would just like flip those bits, and the goal was to crash it as quickly as possible. Which doesn't really answer your question, but that was an example of self-modifying code, I guess not for a particularly useful purpose, but anyway, I'd have people, play that until the computer crashed. Anyhow, on your positive example, I see today people just using it to augment them. I think, open loop, could it work for certain very limited domains today, like if you, without the human intervention to guide it, I bet it could actually do some kind of continued improvement. But I don't think we're quite at the stage where for, real serious things. I mean, first of all, 1 million contexts is not actually enough for big code bases to churn on the entire code base. But you could do like retrieval and then augmentation editing. I guess I haven't personally played with enough, but I haven't seen it be at the stage today where a complex sort of piece of code will just iteratively improve itself. But it's a great tool, and like I said, with human assistance, we for sure do. I mean, like I will use Gemini to like try to do something with a Gemini code. Even today, but not very open loop, deep, sophisticated things, I guess.
Are you trying? Oh, sorry.
Let me get somebody in the back just because, yes, sir. Yeah. Cool. So you first, and then the lady behind you.
Thank you. So I'm curious, what's your take on some ultimate decision, or plan at least, to raise $7 trillion, right? I'm just curious, like, how do you see that from obvious years up?
Look, I saw the headline. I didn't get too deep into it. I assumed it was sort of a provocative headline or statement or something. I don't know. He hasn't asked me for $7 trillion. I think it was meant for like chip development or something like that. I don't get. I'm not an expert in chip development, but I don't get the sense that it's just something you can like sort of pour money, like even huge amounts of money, in outcome chips. I'm not an expert in the market though. Let's see. Let me try somebody way in the back. Was there? Okay. Yes. Sorry. Oh yeah. Sure. Yeah.
So we all know the training cost of large language model is like super high. So how do we should monetize it?
Oh, the training cost of models are super high. Yeah, the training costs are definitely high, and that's something companies like us have to cope with. But I think the long-term utility is incomparably higher. Like if you kind of measure it on a human productivity level, if it saves somebody an hour of work over the course of a week, that hour is worth a lot. And there are a lot of people using these things, or will be using them. But it's a big bet on the future. Costs less than $7 trillion, right? Yes.
What's your thoughts on model training on device?
Model training on device.
Running on device.
Oh, model running on device. Yeah, model running on device. We've shipped it to, I think, Android, Chrome, and yeah, our Pixel phones. I think even Chrome runs a pretty decent model these days. We just open sourced Gemma, which was pretty small, with a couple billion parameters. I can't remember right now. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's really useful. It can be low latency. You're not dependent on connectivity, and the small models can call bigger models in the cloud too. So, yeah, I think on device is a really good idea.
Yeah.
Yes.
What are some verticals / industry that you feel like this Gen AI wave gonna have a big impact on, and like startups should consider hacking on those industries?
Which industries do I think have a big opportunity? I think it's just like very hard to predict. I mean, there's sort of the obvious industries that people think of, sort of customer service, or kind of just like, analyzing, I don't know, like different lengthy documents and kind of the workflow automation, I guess. Those are obvious, but I think there are going to be non-obvious ones, which I can't predict, especially as you look at these sort of multimodal models and the surprising capabilities that they have. I mean, I feel like, that's why we have all of you here. You guys are the creative ones to figure that out. Okay, you sir.
My name is Alex. We run dozens of thousands of customer service chats every day and on LLMs, and previously GPT-4 was the only thing that really worked, and now it seems that Gemini is another thing that really works. Thank you so much for this. And it seems like
Delighted to hear it, thank you.
it seems like it's way more cheap while it works even better sometimes. So the question is, will it stay staying cheap, or are you just planning to raise prices at some point, or
We're not. I'm actually not on top of the pricing thing. I don't expect that we will raise prices, however, because there are fundamentally a couple of trends. One is just that these, there's just optimizations and things around inference that are just constantly, like, all the time. So it says, I have this 10% idea, this 20% idea, and like month after month that adds up. I think our TPUs are actually pretty damn good at inferencing. I'm not dissing the GPUs, but for certain inference workloads, they're just configured really nicely. And the other big effect is actually we're able to make smaller models more and more effective, just with new generations, just whatever architectural changes, training changes, all kinds of things like that. So the models are getting more powerful, even at the same time size. So I would not expect prices to go up.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
What are your predictions for how AI is going to impact healthcare and biotech, and some things you're excited about in that?
Oh, AI, healthcare, and biotech. Well, I think there are a couple very different ways. On the biotech side, people look at things like AlphaFold and things like that, just like understanding the fundamental mechanics of life. And I think you'll see AI do more and more of that, whether it's actual physical molecule kind of bonding things, or reading and summarizing journal articles, things like that. I also think for patients, and this is kind of a tough area, honestly, because we're definitely not prepared for, or just AIs like, go ahead, ask it any question. Like, we're not, AIs make mistakes and things like that. But I think there's a future if you can overcome those kinds of issues, where an AI can much more deeply spend time on an individual person and their history and all their scans, maybe mediated by a doctor or something, but actually give you just better diagnoses, better recommendations, things like that.
And are you focusing on any other non-transformer architectures for like reasoning, planning, or any of to get better at that?
Okay, question. Are you focusing on any non-transformer architectures? I mean, I think there's like so many sort of variations, but I guess most people would argue are still kind of transformer based. I mean, I'm sure somebody in the company, maybe Simon can speak more to it, would be looking, but yeah, as much progress as transformers have made over the last, whatever, 6, 7, 8 years, I guess. There's, you know, there's nothing to say there's not going to be some new revolutionary architecture. And it's also possible that just, you know, incremental changes, for example, sparsity and things like that, that are still kind of the same transformer, also bring revolutions. So, I don't have a magic answer.
But is there some bottleneck for like reasoning kind of questions?
Is there a bottleneck
for using
in
this
transformers?
like, yeah.
I mean, there's been lots of theoretical work showing the limitations of transformers, and, you know, you can't do this kind of thing, this many layers and things like that. I don't know how to extrapolate that to like contemporary transformers that usually don't meet the assumptions of the theoretical works. So it may not apply, but I'd probably hedge my bets and try other architectures, all else being equal.
Okay. Thank
How
you.
many more do you want me to do?
As long as
Yeah. Thanks.
I think a while ago, this is other topic, but a while ago Google had the Google Glass, but now Apple has Vision Pro. I think Google Glass may be a little bit early. Would you consider give that another shot?
Yeah, I feel like I messed up Google Glass. No, but I feel like I made some bad decisions. It was for sure early in two senses of the word. Maybe early in the overall evolution of technology, but also I think in hindsight I tried to push it as a product when it itself was sort of more of a prototype, and I should have set those expectations around it. And I personally didn't know much about sort of consumer hardware supply chains back then. Anyway, a bunch of things I wish I'd done differently. But I personally am still a fan of kind of the lightweight, kind of minimal display that offered that you could just like wear all day versus the big heavy things that we have today. That's my personal preference. But the Apple Vision and the Oculuses, for the matter, they're very impressive, like having played with them. I mean, I'm just impressed with what you can have in front of your screen. But that wasn't what I was personally going for kind of back then. Yes, ma'am.
So do you see Gemini expanding capabilities into like 3D kind of down the line of spatial computing in general, or a simulation of the world in general of that? And especially beyond Google Glass, Google already have several products that's really in the area, right? Like Google Maps, Street View, AirCore, all of that. Do you see all of those have some synergies between them?
Wow, that's a good question. To be honest, I haven't thought about it, but now that you say it, yeah, there's no reason we couldn't, put in more sort of 3D, like it's kind of another mode, 3D data. So probably something interesting would happen. I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't try to put that into a model that's already got all the smarts of the text model. Now can turn on something else too. And by the way, maybe somebody's doing it at Gemini. I don't know. Yes, this is because I'm not privy to it or I forgot about it. Doesn't mean it's not happening. Okay, yes, question in the back there. So.
Are you optimistic that we'll be able to rein in text generating models' ability to hallucinate? And what do you think about the ethical issue of potentially spreading?
Big problem right now. No question about it. I mean, we have made them hallucinate less and less over time. But I would definitely be excited to see a breakthrough that brings it to near zero. I don't, that's not, you can't just like count on breakthroughs. So I think we're going to keep going the incremental kinds of things that we do to just like bring all the hallucinations down over time. Like I said, I think breakthrough would be good. Misinformation, misinformation is a complicated issue, I think. I mean, obviously you don't want your AI bots to be just like making stuff up, but they can also be kind of tricked into, like, I mean, there's a lot of, I guess, complicated political issues in terms of what people consider, what different people consider misinformation versus not. I mean, it gets into kind of a broad social debate. I suppose another thing you could consider is about them sort of deliberately generating misinformation on behalf of another actor. From that point of view, I mean, unfortunately, it's like, it's very easy to make a lousy AI, like one that hallucinates a lot. And you can take, you know, any open source text model and probably tweak it to generate misinformation of all kinds. And if you're not concerned about, you know, the accuracy, it's just like kind of an easy thing to do. So I don't know. I guess now I think about it, I mean, detecting AI-generated content is an important field and something that we work on and so forth. So you at least can maybe tell if something coming at you was AI-generated. Yeah.
I'm Alexandra. So the CEO of NVIDIA said that basically the future of writing code as a career is dead. What is your take on that? And what do you think could potentially protect our careers as engineers?
Okay, yeah, I thought that should say that. I mean, it's like we don't know where the future of AI is going broadly. I would, you know, we don't know, you know, it seems to help across a range of many careers, whether it's graphic artists or customer support or doctors or executives or, you know, what have you. I mean, so I don't know that I would be like singling out programming in particular. It's actually probably one of the more challenging tasks for an LLM today. But if you're talking about for, you know, decades in the future, what should you be kind of preparing for and so forth? I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, the AI could get quite good at programming, but you can say that about kind of any field of human endeavor. So I guess I probably wouldn't have singled that out as like saying don't study specifically programming. I don't know if that's a good answer. Okay, hand the back.
If a lot of people start using these agents to write code, I'm wondering how that's going to impact IT security. You could argue that like the code might become worse or like less checked for certain issues, or you could argue that like we get better at writing test suites which cover all the cases. What are your opinions on this? Like, is maybe for the average programmer like IT security the way to go because like the code's got to be written, but someone still needs to check it's working.
Oh, wow, you guys are all trying to choose careers based on I don't know, I think you should use a fortune teller for the general line of questions. But I do think that, you know, using an AI today to write, let's say, unit tests is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of thing the AI does really quite well. So I guess my hope is that AI will make code more secure, not less secure. I mean, it's usually, insecurity is to some extent the effect of people being lazy, and the one thing that AI is kind of good at is, you know, not being lazy. So if I had to bet, I would say there's probably a net benefit to security with AI. But I wouldn't discourage you from pursuing a career in IT security based on that. I think that's premature. Okay, question back there.
Hey, do you want to build AGI?
Do I want to? Yeah. I mean, I think it's different people mean different things about that. But to me, the reasoning aspects are really exciting and amazing. And you know, I kind of came out of retirement just because of the trajectory of AI is so exciting. And as computer scientists, just seeing what these models can do year after year is astonishing. So, yes.
Any efforts on like humanoid robotics or these? Because there was so much progress in Google X, like in 2015, 16. And
Oh, humanoid robotics. Boy, we've done a lot of humanoid robotics over the years and sort of acquired or sold a bunch of companies in humanoid robotics. And now there are a bazillion, anyway, there are quite a few companies doing humanoid robotics. And internally we still have groups that work on robotics in varying forms. So what are my thoughts about that? I don't know, in general, I worked on X prior to this sort of new AI wave, and there the focus was more hardware projects for sure. But honestly, I guess I found the hard way, no pun intended. Hardware is much more difficult, kind of on a technical basis, on business basis, in every way. So I'm not discouraging people from doing it. We need people for sure to do it. At the same time, while the software and the AIs are getting so much faster at such a high rate, I guess to me that feels like that's kind of the rocket ship. And I feel like if I get distracted in a way by making hardware for today's AIs, that might not be the best of use of times compared to what is the next kind of level of AI going to be able to support, and for that matter, will it design a robot for me? That's my personal view. There are a bunch of people at Google and Alphabet who can work on hardware. Yes?
Thanks.
Considering advertising revenue is really important for Google, what's your take on how advertising will be disrupted with everything that happens with generative AI?
Yeah.
The way people search.
The question about advertising. Yeah, I, of all people, not too terribly concerned about business model shifts. I mean, I think it's a little bit, I think it's wonderful that we've been now for 25 years or whatever, able to give just world-class information search for free to everyone, and that's supported by advertising, which in my mind is great. It's great for the world, kid in Africa has just as much access to basic information as the president of the United States or what have you. So that's good. At the same time, I expect business models are going to evolve over time. And maybe it'll still be advertising because whatever, the advertising kind of works better. The AI is able to tailor it better, you like it. But even if it happens to move to, now we have Gemini Advanced, other companies have their, paid models. I think the fundamental issue is that you're delivering a huge amount of value. Displacing all the mental effort that would have been, required to take the place of that AI, whether in your time or labor or what have you, is enormous. And the same thing was true in search. So I personally feel as long as there's huge value being generated, we'll figure out the business models. Yeah.
Speaking of which, does Chrome's third-party cookie deprecation give Google any advantage in training future models or personalized models?
Chrome's third-party cookie. I'm gonna be embarrassed as how naive I am about the detail. I mean, I vaguely am aware of that stuff, but I can't think of how those things interact. I'm sorry.
I'm not a tech guy, so.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe you should answer the question. How many more do you want?
Maybe two more.
Okay, two more questions. Yes.
Where do you see Google search going?
Where do I see Google search going? Well, it's a super exciting time for search because your ability to answer questions with AI is just so much greater. I think it's the bigger opportunity is in situations where your recall limited. Or so, like you might ask a very specialized question, or it's related to your own personal situation in a way that nobody out there, on the internet has already written about. For the questions that 1 million people have written about already and thought deeply about, it's probably not as big a deal. But the things that are very specific to what you might care about right now in a particular way, that's a huge opportunity. And you know, you can imagine all kinds of products and UIs, different ways to deliver that. But basically, AI is an enabler, just doing a much better job in that case. Okay, last question. Okay, who's going to get the last question? Is it a good one? Who's got a good one in the back? You have to be confident. Are you sure? Okay.
Alphabet's had this subsidiary Brin, and you also have a company like 23 and so how AI is helping towards the path for more immortality?
Sorry, for more what again? Mortality. Oh. Oh, okay. Look, I'm probably not as well versed as all of you are, to be honest, but I've definitely seen the kind of the molecular AI make huge amounts of progress. You could imagine that there would also be a lot of progress, maybe I haven't seen yet, on the epidemiology side of things, to just be able to get kind of, I don't know, more honest, better controlled, a kind of broader understanding of what's happening to people's health around the world. But yeah, what can I will give you a good answer on the last one. I don't have like a really brilliant immortality key to say AI just like that. But you know, it's the kind of field that for sure benefits from AI, whether you're a researcher or like, you know, I want it to just summarize articles to me, step one. But in the future, you know, I would expect the AI would actually give you novel hypotheses to test. It does that today with the AlphaFolds of the world, but maybe in more complex systems than just molecules. Okay.
Amazing, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think really humble to have you here.